Hey guys, how's it going everybody? My name is Blitzwinger. Ladies and gentlemen, today I am joined for a very hopefully interesting debate by the one and only JayShockblast. What's going on, dude? Welcome.
Living the dream. Always love chatting with you. I think it always makes a good video.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm actually really stoked for this because if you guys both or follow us both on Twitter, you might have seen that we got into it a little bit. Got into a bit of a debate in regards to Spider-Man and the movie rights of Spider-Man and where they currently lie, and the entire controversy around Sony and Disney and Marvel and the giant mess that it has been over the last little while. So it seems like we kind of sit on two different sides of this argument, where I seem to kind of lean more towards like, yeah, Sony's perfectly in the right to do this and there's nothing wrong with them acting in the way that they have, whereas you seem to be more on the side of Disney and Marvel, saying like, hey, what's going on here? They should give Spider-Man back. Correct?
Yeah, I mean, sort of. I think
the
reason... No. All right, so I am definitely on Marvel's side. Like,
okay,
that's
good.
100% accurate. The one thing I do want to say is I think I actually agreed with what you were tweeting. I just didn't think it was a good example with Spider-Man. Basically, your tweet was, you don't think it's a good idea that Disney should own everything. And to me, I don't think Spider-Man's a good example because they should own Spider-Man. It's Marvel. They own Marvel. Everything within Marvel should belong to Marvel. I do understand the Sony rights situation. I think that they took advantage of Marvel when they were in dire straits. It's a kind of a catch-22 situation. Maybe Marvel's not even here today.
So how about, before we continue, break that down for people a little bit, just so that we don't assume that everybody knows exactly what we're on about.
So in 1998, Marvel was just coming out of bankruptcy. They were in dire straits. They were in trouble. We almost lost them. For respect. So they put up, they were trying to find ways to get some money in without, selling the company, without, taking on investors. And, they decided to sell movie rights, and a number of different studios bought in. Obviously, we know Sony bought Spider-Man and a few other things. Fox bought, the X-Men, and they actually bought the Fantastic Four and Iron Man and a few others. Sony actually also bought Ghost Rider. And then New Line Cinema bought Deadpool, and there was Universal, picked up Namor and a couple others. So they really spread it out, and basically the way I see it, and I don't know for sure, but I feel like they didn't really know what they were doing, and all of these movie studios did. Because a perfect example, what they did is you have to use these properties and make films, or the rights revert back to us if you don't do it within a certain period of time, which I believe is 3 years. So
they have to have a movie in production, basically.
Yeah, or I don't even know if it's production. I think they have to release it. There's something has to come out, which is why I don't know if you've ever seen. Fox did a Fantastic Four movie, and it's the cheesiest Fantastic Four movie you'll ever see. Looks like they're wearing sweatpants for costumes and stuff, and they released that just so that they didn't lose the rights. And it was total budget. They put it out, quote unquote. So yeah, they did stuff like that. But a lot of these rights have reverted back to Marvel. Iron Man obviously reverted back to Marvel. Nobody touched that. And Ghost Rider and Luke Cage and Daredevil and all these people or characters went back to Marvel because they never get used. I don't think if they were to do this today, they never would have put the terms this way. And the reason why is you look at what Sony did. Sony did it based on X amount of movies. So, Sony's deal is up now after the 5 films that they agreed to, whereas Marvel, there's this never-ending rights with Sony, and I just think it's kind of messed up. And I just feel like Spider-Man belongs with Marvel. Marvel should be able to make movies with whatever characters they want. I mean, Sony actually almost had the entire catalog of Marvel characters.
Yeah, it was close. Yeah.
Super famous line where nobody gives an ish about the other Marvel characters, just bring me Spider-Man. That's what a Sony executive said. Yeah,
I agree. I mean, look, I guess the key differentiation here is that the way I look at it, right, as the events of 1999, is that if let's say the deals that took place did not take place, Marvel would be gone, right? So it's like we would never even get to the point where there's movies being made about these properties, because at the time, for Sony to give Marvel $7 million for something that was just coming out of the comic book industry crash, right? And there was just like no, if you really think about it, like imagine like a big movie rights deal, like I don't know, some like a Da Vinci Code or something big from like a book series, right? Usually when they option those rights for movies, it's like $2-3 million, and those are massive success. So to like equate that to the same thing with comic books, you could say that that was not an unfair deal, especially to a company that needed that money at that time. Meaning that like if they could have gotten a better deal from someone else, do you not think they would have negotiated for a higher value for Spider-Man?
Well, I don't think the money isn't what bothers me. Like it's crazy to think of the return on investment Sony has gotten out of these characters, you know? Like they totally hit it out of the park with the deal. I feel like they took advantage of the situation. I don't think Marvel was obviously operating from a position of strength. Not that they need to, but I like it. Are you familiar with how like record label deals work?
Some, not like extensively, but yeah.
So something that's very famous that happens with record labels is they'll sign these bands, and they're not just signing them, they're kind of getting them to sign over their catalog, their publishing rights.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's like recently Scooter Braun when he bought the Taylor Swift catalog of like masters, right?
It's not just that. It's like, yeah, I mean, yeah, basically. Like they own the songs. Like there's a movie called
they own those versions of the songs, because from what I understand, again, the legal loophole around that is that similarly like what Taylor Swift is going to do now is she's going to re-record new masters that will, I guess, be adjusted or something like that, so that Scooter Braun no longer would, like, he would still own those other versions of those songs, but he would no longer own like the new masters or something like that.
I think there's two versions of it. Like, I think that's one certainly one version, but you know, essentially, there's a Netflix movie about Motley Crue, The Dirt.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I heard about it. Never watched it, but I know the Motley Crue.
It's awesome. All right. Like, I love it. It's got Ewan Rayone is in it as Mick Mars, and the kid that was in Daredevil, that was like the crazy ex-military kid.
Oh, yeah.
That like blew himself up.
Yeah. I don't know.
I don't remember his name, but he's Vince Neil, and he's fantastic. And Machine Gun Kelly is Tommy Lee. So like, as part of that movie, part of their like negotiations to get out of their contract with Elektra was getting their song rights back. And they did that because they want to be able to, you know, publish them and do whatever they want with their own songs. Kind of like the Beatles, they don't even own their own songs, you know?
Yeah, but do you not feel like, okay, I guess then the bigger issue here becomes an element of discussion in regards to like creative rights versus business rights, correct? Like, and furthermore, do we not then just say, okay, well then the people who created those characters, they should own the right? Like, Stan Lee should be the owner of Spider-Man. It shouldn't even belong to Marvel by that logic, right? Because he's the one that like created the idea, but then it was Marvel that takes all the risk to, you know, fund printing the book, the inking, all the costs that are associated, paying Stan, paying Steve. Like, do we not then get into like a completely different argument about, well, okay, well, if anything creative is ever deemed to be created by a certain party, then those individuals should own the rights in perpetuity to that work? Well,
I guess that really just comes down to what agreement they had, you know, when they signed that contract. And I guess I know that's kind of counterintuitive to, you know, what I'm saying about the Sony Marvel thing, but
yeah, like, because then it's like, that's the deal, right? Like, that's what Sony, like, they agreed that, hey, we get to make Spider-Man movies for $7 million and within these terms. And should, for example, one of the other nuances that I actually did not even know until this past week is that if Sony is ever bought by another company, those rights automatically revert back to Marvel. So it's like Sony's the only one that can own them.
Yeah, which is great, which is what I guess we all hope for at this point, because Sony certainly hasn't been in good shape either, you know, financially. But that's neither here nor there. I look at employer relationships a little bit different though, because I look at I worked for Bose for many number of years, and there are people at Bose that are working for Bose, creating patents for Bose, and they don't get to leave and go to Skull Candy or something and take those with them, So like it's kind of the same thing. And this was actually an issue, and kind of one of the reasons you didn't see a lot of new characters created for a while with Marvel, because apparently their deal with creators was not very good, and nobody wanted to create a character for them because they just outright owned it. And that's something you have to consider. But that's their world. Their world is not their world is making comic books and creating stories. It's not
but again, you see, the issue here is that I feel like you're romanticizing one company, and then the other one you're painting as like a ruthless business organization that seeks nothing but capital and revenue, whereas it's like, if we're being honest, that's their motivation. Like at the end of the day, Marvel as an entity is, and before it was purchased by Disney, when it was like a standalone thing and Marvel Entertainment, its purpose and its entire existence is to make money. Because if it does not make money, it will cease to exist, just like it almost did.
Okay, let's put the business aside. Why does anybody want to take Sony's side? Business aside.
Yes. Okay. So I think that it's not a matter of like just like taking Sony's side in the sense of like saying, oh, I only agree with the business end. I think that there is definitely a large group of people that seems to sort of kind of start to realize that, hey, Disney owns everything, especially with Disney Plus. It's like we can clearly tell that, my goodness, they like own the world's most powerful brands all under one umbrella. So there's a bit of a worry of like, what will that do to the landscape as a whole? Again, there's been multiple stories about like Disney bullying theaters into like saying, hey, you're going to keep playing our movies because otherwise we're not going to screen. And there's like a lot of issues with shady stuff that Disney does. But again, you could say, okay, well, that's not Marvel, or it's a separate branch. So I think there's an element of that, of worry of one company owning everything and therefore having a huge amount of power over those same creators that we mentioned. Like if there's only one place to work, you have to toe the line.
Yeah, you don't think Spider-Man's a bad example of that though? Like that's already a Marvel entity. Like the movie is the only possible thing. It still is a Marvel entity.
It's still a Marvel entity by all accounts. Like it's literally, they still own, they can make TV shows, right? They can make comics, they can make whatever they want outside of movies. It's just that Marvel, it's like as soon as they see the movies, they like, that's why they treated the X-Men like they did in the comics. That's how they treat. Look, as soon as they got the X-Men rights back, they put Jonathan Hickman to write comics for them, and they knock it out of the park. So it's like, and they abuse their own characters as soon as like, because they don't have the movie right.
And you know what? I hope they do it to Spider-Man.
I mean, I think that that's a silly way of like looking at it, in the sense that if you look at something like a lot of people are saying, oh, Sony's going to do terribly with it because the Amazing Spider-Man movies suck and all that stuff. Into the Spider-Verse won an Oscar. That was a full Sony production. Like there was no Marvel or MCU involvement there at all, right?
Yeah, but like Marvel, I mean,
was that not a good movie?
Yeah, it was good, but it's animated. It's not really the same thing.
Okay, what if they make an animated universe now? Like, yeah, that's what they go for.
You don't think that Marvel could do that on their own? Like, they could have hired the same people to make the same movie to tell the same story. Like,
I'm sure they could have, but the deal is that they gave that up. Like, it's not like it was stolen from them. Like, that's what I mean. Like, a lot of people are crying wolf, like, or pretending like as if Marvel is like, oh, poor old Disney, that they can't get these rights and they did all this work. And it's like, it's a business transaction. That's like how it has to be looked at. There was a fair deal that was put into place. One party paid another party a certain X amount of dollars for certain rights. And it's like, you can't just then go like, okay, well, now we're in a good position and we make great movies, so we should get our character back.
Well, no, I'm fine with, like, here's the thing. I'm fine with if Sony keeps the rights or whatever. I just don't see any benefit of separating Spider-Man from everything else. Like, I fully concede, like, this is definitely like both parties are responsible for making this work, but I feel like they're in a pissing contest, and it's stupid. And I don't care about Disney. I only care about Marvel. I'm not a Disney guy by any stretch of the imagination. I just want Marvel characters to be in Marvel movies, no matter what. I don't think Marvel should have to worry 1 second about who they put in their movies. They should, if they want to get Spider-Man in their movie, they should be able to do it. And the thing is that I don't know the guy's name, but from what I understand, the guy that's heading up the Sony side of things is
Tom something. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like I'm pretty sure he came over from Fox, and he replaced Amy Pascal, who went over to Universal, which, by the way, she goes over to Universal, and suddenly we've got Namor back in everything. You know why? Because Universal was holding on to Namor, like, you know, all of a sudden there's a She-Hulk TV series, you know, like they were holding on to all those rights and everything. And now I feel like the deal was brokered in good faith. And I feel like Marvel actually gave up a decent amount. I mean, giving up 95% of the movie revenue. They weren't trying to get free money. I don't know,
but they weren't financing anything.
They were, under the new terms, they wanted to finance whatever.
The new terms, yes.
Right. Whatever percentage, like, I don't know what to believe, because I've heard anywhere from 25 to 50.
Well, there's been two rumors. So the point is, as soon as this new deal fell apart, the 5-movie deal, or it concluded, it didn't fall apart. So once that ended and they went to renegotiate, so the details are that Sony came to Disney and said, hey, we want to do the exact same deal. Like, let's just do same type of deal. Spidey gets to appear in 2 of your movies, like Avengers type things, and then 3 solo films. We finance the whole thing, give you 5% of the profit. He gets to exist in the MCU. All right. That's their offer. Marvel rejected that and said, no, we want 50% of the solo profit as well.
Depends on whose story you believe.
Yeah. So then again, I've heard, I guess again, we don't know verifiably, but I've heard that that's what the initial offer was, to which Sony said, no, that's not happening. And then since then, there was another offer where Marvel and Disney has said, we will co-finance the movies, but we want 25% of the profit. Which to me sounds like a great deal. But like, even that deal is fair.
But even the 50-50 was co-financing. Like, the rumor was both of them go in halfsies on the movies, and they get back halfsies on the movies. You know, I don't really, like, honestly, for Disney, like, 5%. I don't know if that's really fair when you consider $400 million plus over the highest grossing Sony Spider-Man movie. I think they more than earned the right to, you know, negotiate a little bit more. I also kind of feel like they gave Sony the Spider-Man PS4 game, like, as a act of goodwill. I mean, like, there's definitely, like, a lot of scenarios that they've done, I feel like, to show good faith to Sony. I feel like this Tom dude from Fox, from what I've read, is he came in and said, no, we learned everything we needed to know from you on how to universe build.
I saw that.
And now we just want to do it ourselves and take all the money. And
I mean,
I don't think that's good faith.
Yeah, I mean, look, I agree with you as far as, like, that type of stuff. I don't even know how to comment on, because we have no idea. You know what I mean? Like, until somebody, like, hopefully, like, comes out and says, like, hey, here's exactly what happened, or it's like we actually hear both sides of the story, because the truth is always somewhere in the middle. Like, neither one side nor the other is, like, 100% of the way correct. But to me personally, I think that Sony's perspective on this, and again, the only reason why I am able to even say anything, like, for the Sony side is because I'm looking at it as a business transaction. As a fan of Marvel, I think it'd be amazing, of course, if Spider-Man stays a part of the MCU, because I think everybody benefits, in my opinion, as a fan, right? From a business perspective, I understand that Sony looked at it and they were like, hey, we made a Venom movie that made $1 billion without any hint of Marvel's assistance. And why would we then go out of our way to, like, keep sharing this property?
It was a terrible movie too. Well, not, all right, it wasn't terrible. It was average.
Yeah, I think it was like 6.5 out of 10. That's what I say. Like, it wasn't great, but it was just like, yeah, it was fun. Like, to check it out once, you know?
But do you think they could do that again?
I mean, that's the thing. The question is this all the work of Marvel and Disney, like what we're having with comic book movies, or is it just that literally every comic book movie? Because look at like The Boy, right? That show on Netflix, it's doing insane on Amazon. It's doing insane numbers. It's doing incredible ratings and just a huge appeal for Amazon Prime. It's like it just seems like you can almost like go no wrong right now and do no wrong with comic book as a whole. Like if you do a comic book property, it just seems like for whatever reason we're in this weird period of time right now where it's like everything that is related to comic books is just massively successful.
Except Shazam, apparently.
I mean, I think it's still a profitable film. Like I don't think it lost money.
It was the one kind of.
But that's the thing, like, do you not think that something like Shazam is like at this, like, again, this is already a tangent, but it's at the same exact like rank as something like an Ant-Man or Ant-Man and the Wasp. Like those movies didn't make insane amounts of money either. Like when we're talking about some of these other Marvel movies that are not Avengers, or basically ever since Infinity War, I think that everyone thinks that, oh, every Marvel movie makes $1 billion because everyone since then basically has, like Black Panther, Captain Marvel, Endgame, like all those movies have been massive hits. But prior to that, they're like the Thor movies, they weren't huge, massive successes until the third one.
Yeah, no, I totally get all that, like for sure. But my thing is, at this point, there's no good that can come from this separation. Like everybody is taking Marvel's side. Like I was actually trying to look up Sony's stock. Sony's stock has fallen almost as a direct result. It was down last I saw like a whole %.
I mean, those things are honestly, you can like there's so many things that can affect that, and it's all like speculative type stuff. Like where we'll see what happens to Sony stock in like a year, you know, like that's when you can see it where it trends, not where it like responses in that. I mean, at
the end of the day, I can't imagine a scenario where they don't fix this. And from my perspective, the main reason that I'm so bullish on Sony is because I think they need to see that. And I've already announced, quote unquote, I tweeted that I'm not going to support a non-MCU Spider-Man in the theaters. I won't go see it. Like, I will acquire via ill means if I have to see it, but I'm not giving them money, and that's with my wallet, you know, and that's the only way that Sony is going to listen, is if we speak with our wallet. Now these idiots that want to like storm their what
if it's well done? Like Into the Spider-Verse was an amazing movie, was it not? It had nothing to do with MCU. What if they do that type of quality film, but it's live action?
I don't care. Like
okay.
I don't.
So it's not. You don't have a. So okay. So then you do make it now about like being loyal to one company.
No. I just want Marvel. I'm loyal to Marvel, not Disney. I want Marvel to be able to use their characters, and
they still can. It's just they choose not to. They can still make a Spider-Man TV show if they want. Like they could literally be like,
if they want to put
a live-action Spidey show.
If they want Miles Morales to show up on Miss Marvel, like he needs to, you know, they should be able to do it. You know, like I mean,
again, I'm not saying that I disagree with that, but what I'm saying is like, if we're living a like happy-go-lucky like kumbaya kind of world, yes, I think that would be great, but it's like we can't ignore the fact that Marvel made a deal. It's like if you've made a commitment to do something, and it's not like they were. I know you're saying like, oh well, they made it under duress or something like that, but it's like it was self-inflicted. It wasn't like they were like just stumbling along and then somebody just decided to like, oh yeah, let's just bankrupt Marvel. It's like they mismanaged themselves as a business, getting themselves into a position where they had to give up those movie rights to stay alive. They did, and therefore, at that time, yes, Sony took a gamble, which could have paid off, but it also could have been a massive fail. They could have made that Spider-Man movie and nobody went to watch it, or everybody received it like horribly, and then we would have never heard of Spider-Man or MCU or Marvel as like a cinematic property at all.
I think they would have made $7 million on Spider-Man by accident. Like,
I mean, I'm sure.
I mean,
look, I think
there was
well,
no risk. Like $7 million.
Well, you have to account for like the risk of like producing the film, like putting in all the money to like make the movie, right?
I mean,
I mean,
sure.
dude, but by that logic, it's like, why did they stop after Batman and Robin and those horrible Batman movies? Because they weren't making money. Like, they were just not profitable for those companies. And that's why there was just this giant lull between Spider-Man and those Batman, right? Like, it wasn't a coincidence. And then now it's the other way around, where every company on the planet, as soon as they can get their hands on something superhero related, they try to do so, because they're like, okay, we just got to try to take part in this craze that's going on with superheroes right now. I just think that we're looking at it as though it's like, oh, well, Marvel comic books and comic book movies as a whole would have been popular no matter what. It's just that Sony took advantage of that deal. Versus, I think it's like, we have no idea how the heck it would have even, like, we don't know if Marvel would be Marvel today or if it would even exist if that deal didn't take place.
Yeah. True, but like they also could have been bought in bankruptcy, and you know, we could be here anyway. I mean, hell, if Sony just bought, I'm sorry if you don't tell us like too much.
No, you're fine.
All right.
You're fine.
I know that. I'm pretty sure we both try not to use the naughty words.
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, I almost feel like it would have been better if Sony just bought all the characters back then. Like, they all belong together, and Spider-Man is such a, I mean, you could argue he's the most popular comic book character in the world. Certainly top 3, you know?
For sure. Yeah.
With him, Batman, and
definitely
Superman.
the most popular Marvel.
Yeah, and like
the most iconic, like everything. And you could literally prove this with facts, just from like figures of like how much the original appearance of Spider-Man cost versus everybody else. Like, you could just literally, you know, nail that down. So I agree with you. Look, I think that it's interesting. I guess like the pivot in the argument is that what you're saying is that you just want all of those characters to be in one pool, and unfortunately, it's like at the end of the day, then the company that is to blame for that is Marvel, because they chose to give off and sell off rights to different bidders instead of negotiating one deal where they said like, okay, take it or leave it. This is the deal. We're offering $40 million, $30 million, whatever it is. You get X-Men, like you get the whole 9 yards. You know?
And it's a catch-22. Like, I don't feel good about that deal. I don't feel like it was a situation that they had any choice to do. It's like their gun was to their head and they had to make this decision. It's like, oh, do I, sell my house so that I can eat, like, and I'll find another living situation. Like, there's just, I don't look, if that deal was just a straight up business transaction between two companies that were fine, that were just doing it, I would look at it a lot differently. But the fact that like Sony took, I just feel like they came in, and there's a lot of blame on Marvel. I don't dispute that whatsoever. I never have. I think that was where character limits were coming into play.
Yeah. With Twitter debates.
But like, I don't debate. I don't.
Defend. Yeah.
Yeah. Like they were in a bad position. And
self-inflicted. Also.
But still, it is what it is, and I feel like Sony took advantage of the situation. And then I feel like Marvel entered this deal in good faith, and I don't feel like this Tom dude had the same good faith, and he's trying to like basically take his ball and go home. And I don't know, man. Like, it's just, I don't. If it wasn't like for the fact that there's all these quotes out there of him like, being just like, oh, I learned everything I want to know, and now I'm just gonna go do my own thing. I know he didn't say that, but like.
No, I think he literally said that. I think that was an interview today, like where they literally asked him like, hey, how do you feel about this? And he said something like exactly like what you're saying, where they said like, hey, we worked enough with Marvel where we feel like we can go on and do this on our own and do just as good of a job, if not better, than what they have.
And I just think that's messed up to go into a relationship like that with the intention of basically just taking all this information and then doing your own thing and creating a knockoff, and then like taking away something that rightfully, I don't know any other way to put it. that rightfully belongs to Marvel, and like I know business-wise it doesn't, but like Spider-Man's Marvel. He is Marvel. And like he belongs in Marvel movies.
But again, I guess characters. Like you see, that's why, because like you're building Marvel as like its own thing that is like, for some reason you don't look at Marvel as a business.
No, I get that, but my thing is that I feel like Sony is the villain here. Like I genuinely don't. I guess that's where my disconnect is, that I don't get that, because to me it's like it was a pure business transaction, and then even now like in my personal opinion, if you look at it, the MCU needed Spider-Man just as much as Spider-Man needed the MCU. Like I know people disagree on that as well with me, but I personally feel like they were with Iron Man. It's like his entire saga was kind of wrapping up, and it's like now there's like this new life by becoming this like mentor type character to another giant character in the form of Spider-Man. They gave that like a whole new life for that character to now have another arc that we could go on. So it's not like there was nothing gained by them including Spider-Man like for the MCU. I think that it made those Avengers movies be more successful, and Sony took no profit. Do you know what I mean? So it's like the participation and the excitement of Avengers Infinity War, for us to be able to finally say, oh, it's an Avengers movie that has Spider-Man in it, is as huge of a deal as it was for Sony to get to enjoy Spider-Man being a part of the MCU. Yeah, like, I think it's not like Sony didn't get their stuff out of it. They got Nick Fury.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. But that's what I'm saying. It's like, that's why I don't get the whole concept of villain. They both had stuff that they were benefiting from. I think that it's just that going forward, whatever, like the initial deal that Disney pushed for, supposedly, if that's the truth, because again, the reports did come out that that Sony offered them the exact same deal. So if Marvel was really that like hung up on like, oh, we love Spider-Man and we want him to be a part of our world, why would they just not take the same deal again?
Yeah, but like if you're gonna sit there and think it's out of question for Marvel to ask for a 50-50 split, how can you not think it's out of question for Sony to expect a 95-5 split all over again, when Marvel just proved that they can make them substantially more money than what they're doing on their own?
I don't know if it was again substantially a lot more. I'm not sure as far as like the breakdown on the numbers, but I'm guessing again that they looked at Into the Spider-Verse and Venom, and they were like, why would we, like, we can do this. They've proven it to themselves that they can do it.
Into the Spider-Verse didn't make that much money, like, comparatively.
No, but I know, but I'm saying, like, again, Homecoming wasn't a giant success like Far From Home was.
I mean, Far From Home is Sony's biggest movie.
Yes, I agree. I'm not saying, again, the argument is not that there is benefit and that Sony gets to make more money. It's just that I think when they looked at like relative to how much more they make and giving up more of the share up.
Did I lose you? Hello? Why can't I hear you? Hello? Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
I can hear you now.
Okay.
Yeah, I lost you for a second.
Yeah,
I was like...
so good. We're getting too heated. Discord's disconnected. But yeah, the point is like, I just think that there is no... if I owned Spider-Man rights, I would never agree to a 50-50 split. It makes no sense, because
I don't think so either, but I also have heard that's not the number. Like,
yes,
I've heard that,
and that's the thing. If the other deal is true, like the 7-picture deal with 25% share, they agree to bring in Venom into the MCU as well. If all that is true, I think that's the deal that should be signed and delivered, because I think that deal benefits everybody involved. The fans win, Sony wins, Marvel and Disney win. But
if that was the deal and Sony walked away, like...
then I would change my tune. But I don't know. You see, the thing is, what we've heard is that Sony, like the details that weren't denied is the fact that Sony made an offer to do the exact same deal, and Disney said no, and then after that, what was reported is the 50% thing, and Sony walked away with that. Right. So it was like,
But I don't know that 50% was ever actually the offer, though. That's, I think it doesn't matter. Like, at the end of the day, like, there are reports that say it was 50, 30, and 25, and whatever it was, like, yeah, 50%. I get it. Like, that is definitely asking a bit much, but they were also offering to co-finance. So, and I understand Sony's perspective. They would rather pay the money up front and then just make all the money back. I get it. But I don't know. Like, at the end of the day, I don't think it's going to matter, because, like, I refuse to believe that they're not going to work this out. I just refuse. And, you know, from my perspective, again, I believe Sony is the villain, and I believe they're the ones that need to change their mind. I believe if they come back to Marvel with something, you know, reasonable, that they're just going to do it, or Disney, they're going to do it. And from my perspective, I think the venom, if you will, needs to go towards Sony, because they're the ones that I feel like are holding this up. And maybe I'm wrong. But I guess that was a nice way to, like, summarize everything on your perspective. For me, I genuinely look at it as I don't have a villain in this story outside of, like, if I step back and I just look at it as somebody who enjoys watching these movies and just as a consumer, I think they're both at fault, because I think that it's just like, you guys could have agreed on something. Like, it's just where no one wants to give up and, like, give a little bit of an inch towards the other, and each one is trying to big dog the other one. So that's my perspective on, like, both of them are the villain in that sense. But outside of that, I really don't understand the perspective that people have of painting Sony as the one who's, like, the abuser in this relationship and them taking advantage, where it's like, there was clearly a business transaction that took place that was, at that time, in my opinion, more than fair, because we'd have no idea of how any of that would have played out, and the position from which Marvel was coming from. It's like nobody else offered them a better price. If they did, they would have taken. Like, if some other company said, hey, okay, we'll offer you $100 million for Spider-Man, they would have sold it for that amount. And regardless, I think, like, doing the whole, 2020 hindsight and, like, looking back and adjusting, it's like you could make the arguments about Marvel was way undervalued, and what Disney paid for Marvel in 2009 was way too little. Like, because now they've made significant amounts more from just the movies, and if we include into that licensing and all the other stuff that they've made 10 times, 100 times their money. So I think that argument is really, like, slippery slope, and it's too difficult to, like, prove one way or another. So to me, it's a pure business transaction, and unfortunately it just involves something that a lot of us have emotional attachment, and a property that we have emotional attachment to, outside of just it being like a sale of, like, let's say if they sold them some sort of a really fantastic warehouse or some crazy patent. Yeah, but, like, I don't know, I feel like if you were selling your house for, it was worth $200,000, but
But how could you know that? How could you determine worth? Because wouldn't worth be exactly what someone's willing to pay for it?
Well,
like, because if your house was worth $200,000, and even if you had to sell it quickly, right? But somebody came through and gave you $200,000, you would still take it. Like, if somebody came through and all the best deal that you ever got for that particular part of your house or your house was $170,000, then that's what it's worth, right? Like, you can't just.
I didn't really get to kind of. No, I mean, like, if your house is worth, $200,000, and, like, somebody comes in knowing that you're desperate and that you need money now, and strong arms you into something for, like, $100,000, and then turns around and flips it for like $300,000, like, it's just, I'm trying to, like, come up with a scenario where there's so many scenarios where, like, people get a raw deal, and then I also look at contracts, like, sports contracts. Like, there are guys all the time that are like, hey, I signed this deal, I'm worth way more money, let's fix it, and they
renegotiate.
And
sometimes, of course, because they feel like there's more value. But at the same time, like, look, I'm sure that Sony paid Marvel quite a bit of money for the video game deal that they put together. I'm sure. So it's like, it's not like they're not getting paid for the rights of that character at some point or time. The point is like exactly how you said, like, first of all, an element of like when you, if you paint it as like, oh, you were selling your house, like let's use the house example, and you were desperate. It's not that they were desperate. It's that, let's say you've accumulated insane amounts of credit card debt because you just want to spend money and just be flamboyant and awesome and have this like baller life. And then suddenly it's like, oh, I can't pay for anything. I got to sell my house. So it's like, it was self-inflicted. So then,
well, all right. What if it was medical bills?
That's different, but it wasn't. We know it wasn't, because it was Marvel being greedy with the comic books and printing 1,000 different variants and doing all the stuff that they like. You can. That's already
a big deal back then.
With all the shiny stuff and everything, like that was the cause of the crash. It was like an abuse of their own customer. They abused the customers, and the customers were like, "Yeah, we're done. This is not collectible anymore."
I mean, either way,
it was self-inflicted. And then furthermore, what if you do buy that house, right? And then you find out, oh, there's a leaky roof that's going to cost 30 grand to fix. Oh, there's this, and the other. And you end up not even, even if you do sell it for 300,000, you only break even. And when adjusted for inflation, you might have actually lost money.
I blame myself. The house analogy was not a good one.
I'm just like,
well, it's like I'm just sitting here saying, oh well, your inspector would have caught that, like, and it doesn't matter. Like, in the end of the day, whatever.
Yeah, I just think, again, you see, to me, it's a business deal. So I just don't understand why Sony's being painted as this like villain or organization that just like, for some reason, like, is holding these rights hostage, whereas it's like, no, they made a business transaction and they obviously care about this property because it makes them a lot of money. So it's like, why would they give up?
Nah, they're villains.
Okay, got it. Fair enough. Well, ladies and gentlemen, let us know where you sit on this debate. Do you side with Jay? Do you side with me? Do you side? Most certainly, I'm probably gonna most likely hear most people side somewhere in the middle, because that's usually the case. But again, we look forward to hearing from you guys. We had an absolute blast here with this chat. Of course, if you're watching this on my end, go check out Jay. I appreciate that. He went on the record here and was able to articulate his opinions very, very, very well. And I'll have a link to his channel in the description box. Anything else you want to plug, Jay?
Well, if you're watching on my channel, you probably already watched on Blitz's channel. So,
much appreciated.
Yeah, but definitely, obviously, Blitzwinger, you gotta check him out, man. Like, I'm glad that, like, honestly, we could probably talk for like another hour on this.
Yeah, for sure.
And it would be interesting and people would want to listen. But yeah. I honestly, like, I'm glad. Typically, I don't like respond to people if I think it's gonna turn into a debate. And I think in the end, like, I still felt like that was not necessarily the best example for a point you were trying to make that I completely agree with.
Okay, I see what you mean. Yeah. So, and that's why I said, like, the whole thing of I'd rather us discuss things, because nowadays it's like, if you start sometimes debating something through Twitter, it's so easy to start arguing with someone where you don't even realize that you guys might be even like arguing towards the same point. So that's why I just wanted to, I guess, like, hear your view on like the disagreeing and, like, you know, just to understand like where people are coming from, and if it's all nostalgia or whatever it might be, like feel good type stuff, you know. So it was just an interesting debate for sure.
And to be fair, like, I feel like we both handled it really well. Like, there was never a point where I'm like, oh, why is he being a jerk, you know? I hope it was the same for me. yeah, for sure. No. I absolutely, dude. I mean, like, that's why I wanted to, like, even discuss with you, because I knew that it was going to be productive. Like, it's not going to be just turning into a shouting match or something like that. It was just an actual point of view that each of us was able to, I think, articulate well. Well, I guess we'll leave it up to people to let us know. And to be fair, like I said, I understand both sides. Like, I think we've wanted to do something like this before, and we ended up being an agree festival. Yeah. So I'm glad that, like, we kind of, like, I think we both feel what we feel for sure, even if we understand where we're each coming from. Yeah. So I mean, this was great, and I love, like I said, I appreciate you taking the time, and I love honestly making videos like this with you. I think we definitely we get along well. We put out good content.
Yeah, if you guys enjoy this, again, smack that like button, and who knows, maybe we'll do something else along these lines in the future. So
I'm
peace out,
available
guys.
just about any time. We'll see ya.
Ayo, that was that.